Dr. Uma's podcast is a series of podcasts providing career advice, work-based tips and learning skills, helping you become a better doctor with a healthy work-life balance. These podcasts are in association with MRCPCH specialty courses. We specialise in courses in interview skills, application and writing and communication skills. Check it out on MRCPCH specialty courses.co.uk. Welcome to Dr. Uma's podcast. I'm Dr. Uma. I'm a paediatric cardiologist, educator and director of MRCPCH specialty courses. In today's podcast, I'll be talking about Handover and how it can be an excellent educational tool. As an educator, I do like to find educational opportunities. I admit not everything is an opportunity and some opportunities can be done poorly. But Handover, I found, when the time is right and you've got the right engagement, it can be really good at teaching the management, the way you should clinically think about a problem, and maybe how you deal with certain circumstances within that presentation. So what opportunities are there? Well, to start with, being able to summarize the patient case is a skill in its own right. Being able to present the key problems, what you've done, or how it led to you doing various tests, what you found, and then why the treatment is what it is. So that's really important, being able to summarize a lot of information. And you think that people should be good at doing that already, but not necessarily. Again, I get loads of phone calls as a paediatric cardiologist about cases that are in other hospitals, and you get told a story where you're still on the phone for a couple of minutes and the story is still going and you're not quite sure what they're actually asking you. So being able to summarize all that information in a concise way, illustrating the key points, is it's a really important skill. And again, Handover allows you to do that. Secondly, being able to know and present the red flags, the key points of the story. And again, it shows your consultant, your seniors, that you're aware that if you are seeing a patient with a particular problem, you know what the key things are to look for. So when you're presenting, you should say whether the red flags or the important things are there or not, so that they also can see that you know how to manage and how to tease out those particular key things that you should be considering. And that can also be really useful phone calls when you're talking to either teams within the hospital or in other hospitals, where you're putting across the red flags, or that you've considered those red flags and they're not there. And also allows you to learn as well what those things are, and maybe you need to go away and think about it. If a patient comes in with X problem, what are the key things I need to make sure that I ask and consider in making my diagnosis. And that comes to my third point, checking your differential diagnosis that you've made on this case. Were they the right ones? Were there ones that you hadn't considered? And is that something you need to think about? And why is and when you're giving Handover, or maybe you're sitting in the group and you're listening to the Handover, you should also be thinking about the case being presented to you. What would I have done? What would my differential diagnosis be? Was that even considered in the story being told? Why wasn't it considered? Maybe you should ask the question. Should you be considering? Should you not be considering it? And those things again are really important to think about. So it's not. This is not just for people that are actually giving the Handover, but there are opportunities for people listening in the Handover. So when I'm talking about these things, I guess you can tell, these are not the patients that you hand over, that were handed over to you. These are the new cases that you've seen overnight, that you've clocked in and you've done the test and you've seen the patient and you've been with them for a period of time, and now you're presenting them to the team and it's new to them. So all those things are all very good points and learning opportunities, but you've got to be able to be in an environment where you're encouraging conversation. And so I think that this is my last point. A good handover, an educational handover, encourages conversation. It allows people who are giving the handover to ask, what should I do next time? It allows people listening in to ask questions about, would you not have done this? Would you do that? And so you've got to make sure that environment has been created. Now, you also got to consider, has this team that's been overnight, are they in a mood to actually be in this atmosphere right now? Because a lot of things that may have happened, they may be in a very they may be just completely exhausted. The last thing I'd want, if I've had a horrible night with resus after resus, I've literally been on my feet the whole night, is then to talk about and be educational. And I admit, so your timing's really got to be on point. Why am I talking about it? Why have I brought up this topic? Well, it was because one of my ex-trainees said to me that they particularly enjoyed how I, along with another particular registrar that I worked with, used to hand over to each other, because we did exactly this. We would hand over, either I was on the night or they were on the night, and they were handing over the cases, and I would think to myself, okay, patients come in with stridor, what was my differential diagnosis? Patients come in with really bad asthma, and they've gone down the usual pathway, and you get to that point, don't you, with wheezes, that, what do I do after the magnesium? Why do I go for one option and not the other? How do I escalate that? And that's the sort of time when you're transitioning. You think these things once you're transitioning into your registrar role. So what we used to do, we used to sort of challenge each other. Why didn't you do this? Why did you do that? Or why wouldn't you do this? And he would justify, and likewise I would justify. I didn't do this because X wasn't an issue or whatever it was. And we didn't do this to find holes in our learning knowledge or to poke fun and be malicious to each other. We actually enjoyed it. We enjoyed this challenge and being able to sort of justify your plans. And I guess I was sort of a year in, just after a year, I was in my second year of being a registrar, and this individual was towards the end of their training. We're both at that stage where we were trying to sort of consolidate. I was trying to sort of go that little bit step further in my sort of understanding of acute situations. So we learned a lot from each other. And what I came to realize over time was that the actual SHOs enjoyed it, because they also were trying to think a bit further ahead and what they would do. And we all are, as SHOs, you get to a point where you go from just taking histories to now start thinking, well, what's my plan? What do I write other than reg to review? So they found it really interesting to think about those things, like, why does someone do this and someone else does that? Is there a rationale behind it? It's not things you would probably find in a book. So they found it really useful. But again, you had to consider what sort of night it was. Were people interested? You've got to read the room and read the emotions of the other person. Now, this type of to and fro, poking fun, or challenging, it doesn't always work. So we could do it to each other because we were very good friends and we enjoyed it. You can't put everyone through that situation. Not everyone's going to want to be in that situation. Not everyone is going to have the temperament that they will particularly enjoy it or benefit from it. They might actually find it really horrible. And again, would I want to be in this situation in all my jobs? No, definitely not. And I think it all depends on, who's happy to do it and who's not. So like any educational initiative, or anything really, educational or not, when you want to bring in something new, everyone has to be on the same page. Everyone has to be invested in and interested in doing it. And so be very careful. As a word of warning, don't just do it, otherwise you end up just and offending people and putting people in a very unhappy place, and that's not fair. The consultants really enjoyed it, I should add. They liked the fact that we were indirectly sort of teaching, but also showing that we knew, and I think that instilled confidence, that they could tell that we were very conscientious in the way we looked at problems. But it also gave me confidence that what I was saying or doing wasn't completely wild, and that I was on the right lines. And by encouraging that conversation, I was able to consult them with it. No, actually, you shouldn't do this, or you should do that, or you should consider this. And it was a good to encourage the consultant to bring forward some feedback, some educational learning, rather than something dictatorial and just just tell me 3 quarters of this, and it's all very boring and listed and whatnot. This was a really engaging way to have it. And let's be fair, let's be honest, how much feedback do we get? We don't get as much feedback as we would like, and so this is a good way to encourage active feedback. So I think if you are wanting to just add an educational element to your handover, and people are happy to do so, there's a lot to learn from handover. Like I said, being able to summarize, have an understanding of the red flags, knowing how you should manage situations, and getting that feedback. Handover is great. It also allows you to find out what's missing in the department. Do we have a protocol? Because if you're saying, well, I manage the patient because we do have a protocol, or you realize that you were following it based on what you've learned elsewhere or seen elsewhere, or you just from your educational acumen, and actually there isn't a guideline protocol or whatnot, should there be? So again, there may be an opportunity there to think about it, and you never know these things until you're actually in that situation. So I really hope that you've gained something from this podcast. I thought it was an interesting topic, and I hope that maybe it sparked an idea for you to do something in your department. Thank you very much for listening to this podcast, and as always, do subscribe. I hope to be doing regular podcasts on my page, and eventually be not only on video on YouTube but also on other platforms. Thank you.